Let me tell you something hard to hear about programming. You've probably seen those videos. Learn programming in a month or master this one test tech and get your dream job. Sounds amazing, right? Just buy a course, learn a few tools and boom, you're working remotely, living your best life, rolling in cash. Stop right there. That's the lie. And honestly, it's not even entirely your fault. If you believed it, it's everywhere. Influencers showing their 1-hour workday and endless leisure time, or those day in life of a programmer. Videos where it all coffee breaks and gaming. And let's not forget the so-called successful devs who shove their 3-month roadmaps in your face. They promise you'll get a fat job offer if you just follow their foolproof system. But here's the truth, they're not telling you everything. Yes, those videos can be inspiring, they motivate you to dive into IT, but what they don't show you are the hidden traps, the real struggles that trip up beginners. Because actual programming, isn't just writing a few lines of code. Sure, it looks simple, just some syntax that the computer understands. Easy, right? It's wrong. The challenge isn't the code itself, it's everything else. Debugging for hours, not understanding why your app breaks, feeling like you're stuck while everyone else zoom ahead. You'll doubt yourself, you'll think, maybe I'm not cut off for this. And that's why so many people quit. Not because they can't code, but because they weren't ready for the battles no one warned them about. Today I'm going to show you those battles, the ones no one talks about, the ones that separate the people who quit from the ones who make it, because you deserve to know the truth. It all sounds so simple, doesn't it? You've memorized the syntax, you know the keywords, you think that's it. I'm a programmer now, someone hire me. But here's the hard truth, reality is so much more complicated. Programming isn't just about writing code, it's about logical thinking, it's about solving problems, and most importantly, it's about deeply understanding the issue you're trying to fix and the tools you're using to fix it. That's the point you need to understand. Programming isn't coding. Yes, you heard me. Programming and coding are not the same thing. People often overlook the most important part of programming, the ability to think like a developer. That's the real challenge. That's what makes learning programming so difficult. The struggle isn't with the code itself, it's with your mindset. You've probably heard it before. Someone who's already made it says, just go learn Java or JavaScript. Take this course, watch these tutorials, follow along, and in a week you'll be a hero. It's so easy, even a baby could do it. Well, guess what? They are not being honest with you. What they are not telling you is this. They had sleepless nights buried under an avalanche of cryptic errors. They felt stupid, sitting there for hours, thinking, am I the only failure who doesn't get this? And worst of all, they couldn't even find answers online because they didn't know how to ask the right question in the first place. And that's the part no book or course can teach you. You can't skip over it, you can't avoid it. You have to experience it for yourself. You have to fight through it. That's how you grow, that's how you become a programmer. But here's the good news, I can help you on this journey. I can show you the key things you need to focus on, the things that will help you build that developer mindset faster. Stick with me, let's break it all down together. Let's imagine for a moment that you've decided to become a top-tier chef. You're all ready to master the art of cooking. So you grab a recipe book and start learning. You memorize a recipe for baking a cake. You know the ingredients: flour, sugar, eggs, butter. You follow the instructions step by step and you bake a decent cake. But then comes the real challenge. What if you're missing an ingredient? What if you mess up the proportions? What if the recipe doesn't match your situation? This is where the truth about programming comes in. If you're memorizing code without understanding the core principles of programming, you're not better than someone blindly following a recipe. Sure, you can answer questions about syntax, you might even ace a coding test. But when it comes to solving a real-world problem, one that requires you to combine your knowledge and think critically, you're stuck. Learning a programming language, whether it's Java, Python, C# or any other, it's a lot like memorizing recipes. It's bare minimum, it's foundation, but it's not enough to make you a great developer. Being a true programmer means understanding the why behind the code. It means knowing what to do when the things don't go as planned. It's about adaptability, creativity, and problem solving, skills that no syntax cheat sheet can teach you. So, if you're approaching programming like a cookbook, just copying and pasting code without deeper understanding, you're setting yourself up for failure. But don't worry, I'll show you how to move beyond recipes and start thinking like a developer. Let's dive into what it takes so truly master this craft. Here's an example to bring this idea home. Let's say you've learned the basics, variables, loops, arrays. You even figure out how to create an array of numbers and print it out in a loop. Great! You've also studied a built-in methods like sum to calculate the sum of array elements. Now you show up in interview, confident, ready to shine. They ask you to find the average of array elements. Naturally, you think, perfect, I'll just use this sum method and divide by the number of elements. But then they hit you with this: you can't use built-in methods, write it from scratch. What they are really asking you is, do you understand how that sum method works under the hood? Sure, it's simple. It iterates through the array and adds up the elements. But the point is, they want to see if you can implement it yourself. And here's the kicker. This is just the beginning. In programming, you'll often hear, don't do it this way, or that method is outdated, or avoid this library or framework. You'll be handed restrictions, constraints, and requirements, yet they still accept you to adapt and come up with solutions using an alternative approach. It's like being told to bake a cake for someone who doesn't eat sugar. You weren't taught how to replace sugar, but if you understand the role sugar plays in the recipe, its function, you can make the necessary adjustments. Once you grasp the fundamentals of cooking, you can start experimenting. You stop following recipes and instead you create your own. The same principle applies to programming. When you have a solid foundation and truly understand the core concepts of programming and the tools you're using, you stop relying on copy-pasting someone else's code from Stack Overflow or GPT. You start building solutions consciously. You write your own code and you make it work for your specific needs. That's where the real challenge of programming lies. Solving problems and thinking logically. It's not just about knowing how to write code. It's about knowing what to write and why you're writing it. To create a new feature or fix a bug, you need to break the problem into smaller, manageable pieces. Then, you systematically tackle each part. This skill, the ability to break down problems, is often overlooked in tutorials and courses. Why? Because it's nearly impossible to teach. It's something you can only learn by doing. And that's what you need to embrace. The process of figuring out for yourself. With practice, you won't just solve problems, you'll solve them thoughtfully, creatively, and with confidence. That's what separates the coders from the programmers. You have to solve these problems yourself. No one else can or should do it for you. It's that simple. You won't develop the skill of problem solving if someone else is always solving the problems for you, right? Tutorials and courses, they are great. They are designed to show you how things work, to guide you with the examples. But if you want to become a good programmer, you also need to figure things out on your own. Here's the key: balance. You need to strike the right balance between using tutorials and learning resources and taking independent action. This is where many beginners fall into a trap. They load themselves up with theoretical knowledge but don't spend enough time practicing. They know all the concepts in their head, but when it comes to applying those concepts in real-world situations, they're lost. It's a frustrating place to be. You studied everything, yet you can't seem to make it work. And what happens next? You start doubting yourself. You think, maybe I don't know enough. So, you go back to the tutorials, you repeat the courses, you dive into more and more resources. And here's the harsh truth: that cycle can go on forever. If you don't take the leap and start applying your knowledge, you'll never learn how to bridge the gap between theory and practice. That's why so many beginners feel stuck. They are endlessly consuming material but never stepping out of the comfort zone of guided learning. The only way to break free is to start doing. Yes, you'll mess up. Yes, you'll feel frustrated. Yes, you'll probably fail a lot in the beginning, but that's exactly how you grow. Think of it this way: tutorials are your training wheels. They help you get started, but if you never take the wheels off, you'll never learn to ride the bike. You'll never experience the freedom of figuring things out on your own. So, stop chasing the perfect tutorial. You already know enough to start. Take what you learned, apply it, and solve problems your way. That's where the real learning begins. Yes, you've worked through tons of examples, but let's be honest, your ability to solve new problems hasn't improved much. You still run ChatGPT for help when faced with something unfamiliar. And here's the hard truth. That's why the learning curve of programming is so steep. You need to strike a balance between consuming educational materials and writing code on your own. But don't misunderstand, this doesn't mean you should completely abandon tutorials or courses. Think of them as life jacket. They'll keep you afloat in the beginning, but eventually you'll have to take it off and swim on your own. The real learning starts when you begin applying your knowledge in different situations. That's why people often experience rapid growth when they land their first job or switch to a new role. It's like cooking without a recipe. Suddenly, you're facing with problems you've never seen before. Sometimes they're so unique that even Google doesn't have an answer. And that's where true learning happens, when you're forced to think critically, adapt, and create solutions from scratch. This is also why many beginners quit programming before reaching the critical stage. They think this will be easier, everything will just click like it did for others, but then reality hits. They find themselves in an environment where they don't know how to solve even basic problems. They see their peers solving these challenges in seconds, and they start to feel inadequate. The thoughts creep in: I'm not smart enough for this. I am not cut out to be a programmer. This is a waste of time. Let me stop you right there. Every programmer expert you admire was once a beginner just like you. Every single one of them faced the same doubts, frustrations, and challenges. What sets them apart is that they didn't give up. They kept pushing forward even when it felt impossible. So here's the deal. Keep going, keep learning, don't give up on this, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It's a crucial part of growth, but remember, for guidance is different from relying on others to do the work for you. The only way to improve is to face the hard stuff head on, struggle through it, solve it yourself. That's how you turn from a beginner into a programmer, and eventually into an expert. I've been where you are. I remember when I first started learning programming, and let me tell you, it was terrifying. I didn't know how to approach most problems, and every new task felt like an insurmountable challenge. I was constantly afraid that I wouldn't be able to master it. I would sit there, staring at my code, thinking, maybe this just isn't for me. But then, something changed. I kept going, I kept practicing, and eventually I hit a point where I'd worked through so many tasks, fixed so many bugs, and faced so many challenges that learning a new technology, picking up a new language, or switching from one tech stack to another no longer felt intimidating. It became just another step in the process. Here's the secret: break your task into smaller, manageable subtasks. It's such a simple technique, but it's incredibly powerful. Even the most complex problems start to feel achievable when you divide them into smaller parts. This approach doesn't just make tasks seem less overwhelming, it gives you a clear starting point and a roadmap to follow. And that's exactly how you'll encounter real-world problems on the job. Why is this so important? Because working on real-world examples and creating personal projects is one of the best ways to learn. When you build your own projects, you're forced to use your brain power. And using your brain means solving problems. Solving problems is what makes you a good programmer. Now, let me be honest with you. Your first project probably won't be groundbreaking. They may not even be good enough to share with the world. But that's not the point. The value lies on the process of creating them. When you work on a project, you'll inevitably run into issues. Maybe you'll want to add a feature, but you have no idea how to implement it. That's when you start researching, googling, and diving deeper. You'll begin to understand how feature works under the hood. You'll figure out how to build mechanisms with the tools you have in the programming language you are using. And here's another reason why personal projects are so valuable. Your portfolio. Your portfolio shows you experience. Experience leads to job opportunities. Job leads to income. And that's simple. Let me share a technique that can supercharge your learning, the Feynman technique. It's based on this principle. You only truly understand a concept if you can explain it in simple terms. When you try to teach someone else, or even explain it out loud to yourself, you're forced to break the concept down into fundamental parts. This process quickly reveals what you understand and what you don't. If you find yourself struggling to explain something, that's a sign you need to study it more deeply. On the other hand, if you can explain it clearly, you will not only reinforce your understanding, but also retain it better. So, don't shy away from explaining concepts to others. It's one of the most effective ways to solidify your knowledge. And let's not forget the most important thing. Use your failures as opportunities to learn. Every time you encounter an error, get stuck on a problem, or feel like you hit a wall, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of the journey. Every bug you fix, every problem you solve, every challenge you overcome is another step forward. So, don't be afraid to fail. Embrace it, reflect on it, and use it to get better. The road to becoming a skilled programmer isn't smooth. It's full of ups and downs, moments of doubts, and stretches where progress feels painfully slow. But if you stick with it, you keep practicing. If you keep building and learning, you'll get there. Yes, it sounds cliché, you learn from your mistakes, but it's true. Mistakes are inevitable, and they are part of the process. None of us are perfect. I am not perfect. Even today I make mistakes at work. Every programmer does. And mistakes happen for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's simple as fatigue. After reading through hundreds of lines of code, your eyes glaze over and you make a typo or overlook something obvious. That's normal. It happens to everyone. The key is to get comfortable with failures. When something doesn't work, don't panic. When you encounter errors, bugs, or things that just don't go as planned, remind yourself this is part of the process. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn. Over time, as you debug hundreds of errors, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll develop an intuition for what might be wrong. When you encounter bugs now, I often solve them within minutes because I faced so many similar problems in the past. My experience helps me narrow down the possibilities right away. And guess what? You'll get there too. Here's my next piece of advice. Consistency is everything. Learning programming isn't something you can do in 30 minutes a day. That's just not enough. Ideally, you should aim for at least an hour a day, and the more consistent you are, the better. Think of it like going to the gym. Working out once in a while won't get you results. It's a regular, sustained effort over time that pays off. But here's another critical point. Stop comparing yourself to others. It's easy to feel discouraged when you see others seemingly progressing faster. Maybe you have a friend who became a programmer in 6 months, or you read comments online from people claiming they landed the job after a year. That can make you feel like you're falling behind. But here's the thing, you don't know their full story. You don't know how many hours they actually spent studying. You don't know how many sleepless nights they had fixing a single bug. Most people don't talk about the hard parts, the hours of frustration, the countless mistakes. Instead, they share the highlight reel of their success. The only person you should compare yourself to is you. So focus your own journey, track your progress, celebrate your wins, no matter how small they might seem. Did you solve a bug that took you hours? Amazing. Did you write your first function that actually works? Incredible. That's small victories add up over time. And finally, don't stop learning. If there is one last thing I can leave you with, it is enjoy the process. Yes, programming is challenging. Yes, there will be frustration days where nothing works. But there's also something incredibly rewarding about figuring things out, building something from scratch, and watching your skills grow over time. So keep going, keep learning, don't give up.